The message arrived on a Tuesday morning in the year 2247. It came not through radio waves or light signals, but through a method humanity had never seen before. One moment, the computers at the United Earth Space Command were running their normal programs. The next moment, every screen on Earth displayed the same thing, an invitation written in every human language that had ever existed. The Galactic Concord welcomes the species known as humanity to the community of stars. A diplomatic summit will be held at the neutral station of Volantis Prime. Send your representative. The universe awaits. For 3 days, the world stood still. Every government, every scientist, every ordinary person stared at those words and felt the weight of history pressing down upon them. Humanity was not alone. They had never been alone. And now, finally, they had been noticed. The United Earth Council met in emergency session in Geneva. Presidents and prime ministers argued through the night. Some wanted to send warships. Others wanted to send scientists. A few suggested sending no one at all, fearing a trap. In the end, they chose Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Elena was 52 years old with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of decades spent in difficult negotiations. She had ended 3 civil wars through nothing but words. She had brought peace to regions that had known only blood for generations. If anyone could represent humanity to the stars, it was her. She accepted the mission without hesitation. "We have dreamed of this moment since we first looked up at the night sky," she said in her acceptance speech. "We drew pictures of stars on cave walls. We built telescopes and rockets and ships that could carry us beyond our small world. All of it was leading to this. I will not let fear stop us from taking the next step." The shuttle they gave her was called the Olive Branch. It was small and unarmed, painted white with the blue symbol of Earth on its side. The Council had been very specific about this. Humanity would arrive among the stars as friends, not as conquerors. They would smile and listen and learn. They would show the galaxy that humans could be trusted. Not everyone agreed with this approach. Admiral Marcus Cole stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform called Sentinel-1. He was a tall man with a shaved head and dark skin weathered by years of service. His uniform carried the medals of 20 campaigns, and his eyes carried the memory of every soldier he had ever lost. He watched the olive branch rise from Earth's atmosphere, a tiny white dot against the endless black of space. In his hand, he held a sealed envelope marked with the highest classification the United Earth Council possessed. "You don't trust them," said a voice behind him. Cole did not turn around. He knew who it was. Dr. Sarah Chen was the chief scientist of Project Prometheus, and she had earned the right to speak her mind. "I don't trust anyone," Cole replied. "That's why I'm still alive. The Council believes this is our best chance for peace. The Council believes many things." Cole finally turned to face her. "They believe that the galaxy is filled with enlightened beings who will welcome us with open arms. They believe that our history of war and violence will be forgiven if we just smile wide enough." He shook his head slowly. "I have spent my entire life studying conflict, Doctor. I have seen what happens when one group meets another for the first time. It is never peaceful. It is never kind. The strong take from the weak. That is the only law that matters." Dr. Chen stepped closer. "And if you're wrong? If the galaxy really is a place of cooperation and shared progress?" Cole almost smiled. "Then I will be the happiest man in history. But until that day comes, I will prepare for the alternative." He held up the sealed envelope. "Do you know what this is?" Dr. Chen's face went pale. "The activation codes?" "Yes. The Council gave them to me before the ambassador left. They are hoping they will never be needed, but they wanted someone ready, just in case." He tucked the envelope into his jacket. "How long until the Prometheus is ready?" "The final systems check completed yesterday. The ship is fully operational." "Doctor," Chen hesitated. "Admiral, that ship was never meant to fly. It was built as a deterrent, a threat we could point at any enemy who threatened Earth. If we actually use it, Cole interrupted, "it will be because everything else has failed. And I promise you, Doctor, if that moment comes, I will not hesitate." He turned back to the window. The olive branch was gone now, lost in the vastness of space. Somewhere out there, Ambassador Vasquez was traveling faster than light toward a meeting that would shape humanity's future. Cole hoped she would succeed. He truly did, but hope was not a strategy. The journey to Volantis Prime took 3 weeks. Elena spent most of that time studying everything humanity knew about alien species, which was almost nothing. The message had come with no additional information, no guidebook for interacting with extraterrestrial life. She would be walking into the unknown, with nothing but her instincts and her faith in the goodness of intelligent beings. Her staff consisted of 12 people: translators, scientists, security officers, and diplomats. They were the best Earth had to offer, selected from thousands of applicants. Each one knew that they might never return home, and each one had volunteered anyway. "What do you think they'll be like?" asked Lieutenant James Park, her head of security. He was young, barely 30, with the kind of earnest enthusiasm that made Elena feel old. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe they'll have 2 legs like us. Maybe they'll float through the air, or exist as pure energy. The universe is vast, Lieutenant. I've learned not to make assumptions. But you think they'll be friendly?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I think that any species advanced enough to travel between stars must have learned to cooperate. War is wasteful. It destroys resources and potential. A truly intelligent civilization would see that peace is more profitable than conflict." Park nodded, but something in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "My grandfather fought in the Pacific War," he said quietly. "He used to tell me that humans are the most dangerous animals on Earth because we can convince ourselves that anything is justified. He said that intelligence doesn't make you good. It just makes you better at being whatever you already are." Elena had no response to that. They arrived at Volantis Prime on a bright morning by Earth's calendar. Though the concept of morning meant nothing in the depths of space, the station appeared on their view screens like a jewel floating in darkness, and everyone on the olive branch stopped what they were doing to stare. It was the size of a small moon, a perfect sphere of silver and crystal that glowed with soft inner light. Structures covered its surface like the buildings of a city, connected by bridges and tunnels and pathways that seemed to follow no logical pattern. Ships of every size and shape moved around it like fish around a reef, coming and going through ports that opened and closed like living mouths. "My God," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the mission's chief scientist. "The engineering required to build something like this, it's beyond anything we've ever imagined." "Remember," Elena said, finding her voice, "we are here to learn. Watch everything, record everything, and whatever you do, do not show fear." The docking procedure was handled by automated systems that seemed to know exactly what the olive branch needed before anyone on board could ask. Clamps reached out and grabbed their ship gently, pulling it into a bay that adjusted its atmosphere to match Earth's. When the doors opened, a wave of warm air washed over them, carrying scents that were strange but not unpleasant. A delegation was waiting for them. Elena had prepared herself for anything, but she still felt her breath catch when she saw them. There were 5 beings standing in a row, and no 2 of them looked alike. One was tall and thin, covered in what looked like living glass. Another was short and wide, with fur the color of autumn leaves and 6 arms that moved independently. A third seemed to be made of smoke, constantly shifting and reforming. A fourth had the body of a spider but the face of something almost human. And the fifth was the largest. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with blue-gray skin and a head that was too large for its body. Its eyes were completely black, without whites or pupils, and they fixed on Elena with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "I am High Arbiter Vorath of the Zeltari," the large being said. Its mouth did not move, but the words appeared directly in Elena's mind, translated into perfect English. "I speak for the Galactic Concord. On behalf of the 47 species of our Union, I welcome humanity to the community of stars." Elena took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Thank you, High Arbiter. I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Council. On behalf of all 8 billion humans, I am honored to accept your invitation." Vorath inclined its massive head. "You are smaller than we expected, and you came in such a tiny vessel. We wondered if perhaps humans were too primitive to build anything larger." It was a test, Elena realized. They were measuring her. "The size of our ship reflects the size of our intentions," she replied calmly. "We came seeking friendship, not to impress you with displays of power. Humanity has learned that true strength is not measured in metal and weapons." For a long moment, Vorath simply stared at her. Then something changed in its black eyes. Something that might have been approval. "Well spoken, Ambassador. Perhaps humans are wiser than we thought. Come, The Grand Conclave awaits. The walk through Volantis Prime was like walking through a fever dream. Every corridor contained new wonders and new terrors. Elena saw species that moved on dozens of legs and species that had no legs at all. She saw technology that seemed like magic and magic that might have been technology. She saw beings made of light arguing with beings made of stone, and neither seemed to notice the tiny humans passing by. Lieutenant Park stayed close to her, his hand never far from the weapon at his hip. It was a useless gesture. Elena knew. If anything on this station wanted to hurt them, there was nothing they could do to stop it. They were ants walking through a world of giants. The Grand Conclave chamber was at the heart of the station, a massive dome filled with representatives from all 47 species. Platforms floated at different heights, each one designed for the specific needs of its occupant. Some held water for aquatic beings, others burned with open flames for creatures that thrived in heat. A few seemed to exist partially in dimensions that human eyes could not fully perceive. Elena was led to a small platform near the center, floating at eye level with most of the assembly. She stood there alone, feeling very small and very human, while thousands of alien eyes watched her. The Galactic Concord recognizes the species known as humanity, Vorath announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. For 300 cycles, we have observed their development. We have watched them split the atom and walk upon their moon. We have seen their wars and their art, their cruelty and their kindness. Now, at last, they have reached the stars. He turned to face Elena. Ambassador, you stand at a crossroads. If you wish to join the Concord, you must accept our laws. You must renounce territorial expansion by force. You must share your resources and your knowledge for the benefit of all species. You must put aside the violence that has defined your history and embrace the peace that defines ours. Elena felt the weight of every human who had ever lived pressing down upon her shoulders. High Arbiter, I accept these terms on behalf of humanity. We are ready to begin a new chapter in our history. A ripple of sound passed through the chamber. Elena couldn't tell if it was approval or skepticism. Then let us begin, Vorath said. The negotiations will take many days. There is much to discuss. For 3 days, Elena talked and listened and learned. She discovered that the Galactic Concord had existed for over 50,000 years, founded by species that had long since vanished into extinction or evolution. She learned about trade routes that spanned galaxies and technologies that bent the laws of physics. She was offered treaties and alliances that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. It was everything she had hoped for. And then, on the 4th day, everything changed. The alarms began without warning, a sound that pierced through every frequency and every mind. Elena was in the middle of a meeting with representatives from a species called the Volani, when the walls suddenly displayed images of space outside the station. Ships were arriving, hundreds of them. They were ugly things, all angles and weapons, painted in colors that seemed designed to inspire fear. They surrounded Volantis Prime in a formation that left no gaps, no escape routes, no hope. What is happening? Elena demanded. The Volani representative, a creature that looked like a jellyfish made of purple light, flickered with distress. The Kreth hegemony. They should not be here. This station is neutral ground. The Krith? Conquerors. They have taken 11 star systems by force. They do not recognize the authority of the Concord. Elena felt ice forming in her stomach. Then why are they here? Before the Volani could answer, a new voice filled the chamber. It was harsh and cold, filled with the confidence of absolute power. Attention, Volantis Prime. I am Warlord Thalvek of the Kreth hegemony. We have come for the humans. Elena's blood went cold. Your species is young and weak, Thalvek continued. Your world is rich in resources. You will submit to annexation by the hegemony. Your people will serve us. Your planet will be stripped for our use. This is not a request. It is a statement of fact. The connection ended, leaving silence in its wake. Elena turned to High Arbiter Vorath, her heart pounding. What do we do? The Concord must have defenses, a fleet. Something. Vorath's black eyes were empty of emotion. The Concord does not intervene in territorial disputes. Our laws forbid it. Territorial disputes? They're threatening to enslave my entire species. Humanity is not yet a member of the Concord. Until you are, you fall outside our protection. Vorath's voice held something that might have been regret. I am sorry, Ambassador. There is nothing we can do. One by one, the alien delegations began to leave. They floated away on their platforms, retreating to their ships, abandoning humanity to its fate. Elena watched them go, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to believe what was happening. She had come seeking friendship. She had found only indifference. When the chamber was nearly empty, Elena walked to the communication console with legs that felt like lead. Her hands were shaking as she activated the emergency transponder hidden in her jacket. It was a simple device, designed to send one signal across any distance, a call for help. Across the vast emptiness of space, in orbit around a small blue planet, Admiral Marcus Cole received the signal. He looked at it for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything it meant. Then he opened the sealed envelope and entered the activation codes. Deep within Earth's moon, in a cavern that had been carved out in total secrecy, lights began to turn on. Systems that had been dormant for years hummed to life. Reactors that burned with the power of captured stars reached critical mass, and the ship that was never meant to fly began to wake up. Cole picked up his communicator and spoke two words that would change the history of the galaxy forever. Wake Prometheus. The Kreth warships hung in space like a wall of death. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the observation window of Volantis Prime, counting them. She had stopped at 217, but more were still arriving, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in flashes of sickly green light. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, covered in weapons that looked like they could crack a planet in half. Behind her, Lieutenant Park was speaking rapidly into his communicator, trying to reach anyone who would listen. The other members of the diplomatic team stood in small groups, their faces pale with fear. Dr. Tanaka was crying silently. Two of the security officers had drawn their sidearms, though they knew the weapons would be useless against what was coming. Ambassador, Park said, his voice cracking. I can't reach Earth. The Kreth are jamming all our long-range communications. What about the station systems? There must be some way to send a message through their network. Blocked. The Volantis Prime authorities have locked us out. Park's hands were shaking. They're not going to help us. Nobody is going to help us. Elena closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. Panic would not save them. Fear would not save them. Only clear thinking could save them now. But even clear thinking seemed hopeless. The door to their quarters opened, and High Arbiter Vorath entered. His massive blue-gray body moved with the slow dignity of someone who had never needed to hurry in his life. His black eyes fixed on Elena with an expression that was impossible to read. Ambassador Vasquez, I came to offer my personal regrets. Your regrets? Elena's voice was cold. The Kreth are threatening to destroy my species, and you offer regrets? The Concord's laws are clear. We cannot interfere in conflicts between non-member species. Humanity has not yet completed the joining process. Because your bureaucracy takes years. You knew this was possible. You must have known the Kreth would come for us eventually. Why didn't you warn us? Why didn't you give us time to prepare? Vorath was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Perhaps we hoped we were wrong. Perhaps we wanted to believe that the Kreth would respect neutral ground. He paused. Perhaps we simply did not think about humans at all. The truth of those words hit Elena like a physical blow. They had come to the stars believing they were special. They had imagined that the galaxy had been waiting for them, that their arrival would be celebrated as the beginning of a new era. Instead, they had discovered that humanity was nothing, a footnote, an afterthought. The galaxy had been spinning for billions of years before humans existed, and it would continue spinning long after they were gone. Get out, Elena said quietly. Vorath bowed his massive head. I understand your anger. For what it is worth, I hope your species survives. You have potential. He turned and left, the door sliding shut behind him. Elena stared at the closed door for a long moment. Then she walked to the window and looked out at the Kreth fleet. Ambassador, Lieutenant Park said, stepping up beside her. What do? We wait. Wait for what? Elena touched the small device hidden beneath her jacket. The emergency transponder. She had activated it hours ago, sending a signal that traveled faster than any ship, faster than light itself. By now, Admiral Cole would have received it. By now, he would be making decisions. We wait for humanity, she said. Warlord Thalvek was not patient by nature. His species, the Kreth, had evolved on a world of fire and constant competition. They had survived by being faster, stronger, and more ruthless than anything else in their ecosystem. When they discovered space travel, they brought those same qualities with them. He sat on his command throne, a seat carved from the bones of the last species that had refused to submit to the hegemony. His body was massive and muscular, covered in red-brown scales that could stop a blade. His face was a nightmare of sharp angles and too many teeth. His eyes, bright yellow with vertical pupils, watched the tactical display with eager hunger. "Report," he commanded. His second-in-command, a younger Kreeth named Korvax, stepped forward. "The station has sealed itself. They are claiming diplomatic immunity. The Concord's immunity means nothing to me." "Yes, Warlord. Our ships are in position. We can destroy Volantis Prime whenever you command." "And the humans? They are trapped on the station. Their vessel is still in the docking bay. They have nowhere to run." Thalvek smiled, revealing rows of teeth designed for tearing meat. "Good. Open a channel to them. I wish to see their fear." The communication screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the human delegation's quarters. Thalvek was disappointed to see that the human ambassador was not crying or begging. She stood in front of the camera with her back straight and her eyes steady, looking at him as if he were an unwelcome guest, rather than her conqueror. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, tasting her name like food, "I am pleased that you have not tried to run. It would have been pointless, but many species make pointless gestures when they are afraid." "I am not afraid," Elena replied. Thalvek laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "Then you are foolish. Fear is the appropriate response to overwhelming power. Your species should have learned that by now. Humanity has faced many threats throughout our history. We are still here. Your history is nothing. A few thousand years of fighting among yourselves on one small planet. The hegemony has conquered 11 star systems. We have enslaved species older and more powerful than yours. Your survival is an accident, Ambassador. Today, that accident ends." Elena did not respond. She simply stared at him, her expression unchanged. Something about her silence unsettled Thalvek. He was used to begging, to screaming, to desperate attempts at negotiation. This calm acceptance was something new. "You have 1 standard hour to surrender yourselves and transmit the access codes to Earth's defense systems," he continued, pushing away his unease. "If you comply, your planet will be integrated peacefully into the hegemony. Your people will serve, but they will live. And if we refuse," Thalvek leaned forward, "then I will burn your world to ash. Every city, every village, every living thing. Your species will become nothing but a memory, and eventually, even that memory will fade." He expected fear. He expected pleading. He expected the breaking point that all species reached eventually. Instead, Ambassador Vasquez smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of her lips, but it was genuine, and it was terrifying. "Warlord Thalvek," she said, "you have made a serious mistake." "A mistake? You assumed that because we came in peace, we were incapable of war." Her smile widened slightly. "Humanity did not survive this long by being gentle. We survived by being the most dangerous species on our planet. We killed every predator that threatened us. We tamed every environment. We split the atom and walked on the moon and reached out to touch the stars." She stepped closer to the camera. "You see a small ship and a handful of diplomats, and you think you know what humanity is. You know nothing. You are threatening a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to kill." Thalvek felt his scales ripple with something that was almost like uncertainty. Words. Empty words from a defeated enemy. Perhaps. Or perhaps not. Elena's eyes seemed to look straight through him. "You have 1 hour, Warlord. I suggest you use it wisely." She cut the connection. Thalvek stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to Korvax. "Double the fleet's defensive formation. Arm all weapons. Warlord, the humans have no ships." "Do as I say," Thalvek snarled. Then more quietly, "Something is wrong. I can feel it." Inside the human quarters, Elena's calm exterior finally cracked. Her hands were shaking again, and she had to grip the edge of a table to keep herself standing. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen," Lieutenant Park said, "or the most insane. Both, probably." Elena looked at her team. "I bought us time. That's all I could do." "Time for what?" "Admiral Cole received your signal hours ago. Even if he launches immediately, it will take weeks for any ship to reach us. Not any ship. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. The Prometheus. Park's face went pale. The Prometheus is a myth. A story the military tells to scare new recruits. It's not a myth. I was briefed on it before I left Earth. The Council wanted me to know what our last resort looked like. Then it's real? A ship that powerful actually exists? It was built in secret over the last 50 years. They hollowed out a section of the moon and constructed it there, using resources from the asteroid belt. The official records say the moon's mass decreased slightly due to mining operations. The truth is that half of it was turned into the most powerful warship humanity has ever imagined. Park sat down heavily. Why? Why build something like that and never tell anyone? Because power that everyone knows about can be planned for, defended against. Power that nobody knows about. Elena glanced out the window at the Krith fleet. Power that nobody knows about is truly dangerous. Can it actually beat them? There are hundreds of ships out there. Elena was silent for a moment. I don't know. I was told that the Prometheus was built using every weapon, every technology, every lesson we learned from 10,000 years of human warfare. Nuclear weapons, railguns, directed energy systems, things I couldn't even begin to understand. They took everything we ever created to kill each other and combined it into one ship. She closed her eyes. The scientists who designed it called it humanity's insurance policy, a guarantee that no matter what we found in the stars, we would have a chance to survive. And if it's not enough, then we die. All of us. Every human on Earth and everywhere else. Elena opened her eyes and looked at her team with fierce determination. But if we're going to die, we'll die fighting. That's what humans do. The hour passed slowly. Elena spent it talking to her team, preparing them for whatever came next. She told them about their families, their homes, the things they loved about Earth. She reminded them why they had volunteered for this mission in the first place. She gave them courage because she had none left for herself. Lieutenant Park stood by the window, watching the Krith fleet. The ships had formed into attack formation, their weapons glowing with terrible energy. Whatever window of opportunity they had was closing fast. Ambassador, he said quietly. It's almost time. Elena nodded and walked to stand beside him. The stars were beautiful, she thought. Even now, even with death approaching, the universe was beautiful. Any regrets? Park asked. Millions. Elena smiled sadly. But not about this. Not about trying. The Krith flagship began to move, leading the fleet toward Volantis Prime. Warlord Thalvek had run out of patience. Elena closed her eyes and said a silent prayer, and then space tore itself apart. The rupture appeared between the Krith fleet and the station. A wound in reality that bled light. It was not like the green flashes of Krith faster than light travel. It was something else, entirely a screaming, burning hole in the fabric of existence that made every being who looked at it feel a primal terror. From that wound emerged a shape. It was black, so black that it seemed to drink in the light around it. It was angular and harsh, covered in weapons that jutted out like the spines of some prehistoric predator. It was 3 kilometers long, and it moved with a silence that made its size seem even more terrifying. The Prometheus had arrived. Elena stared at it, unable to speak. She had been told about the ship, had seen diagrams and specifications, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of it. It was not just a warship. It was a statement, a declaration, a promise written in metal and fire. Beside her, Lieutenant Park made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. My God, he whispered. It's real. It's actually real. The Krith fleet froze in place. Thalvek was screaming orders, demanding information, trying to understand what he was seeing. His tactical officers had no answers. Their sensors could not make sense of the human vessel. Its power readings were impossible. Its capabilities were unknown. It was something entirely outside their experience. Then a voice cut through every frequency, calm and clear and absolutely unafraid. This is Admiral Marcus Cole of the Earth Dreadnought Prometheus. To the Krith hegemony forces, you have threatened a human diplomatic vessel and demanded the subjugation of our species. A pause. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. Thalvek stared at his tactical display, watching the human ship sit motionless between his fleet and the station. It was 1 ship against 200. The odds were absurdly in his favor, and yet, and yet something in that calm voice made his scales crawl. Something in the silence of that dark ship made him feel, for the first time in his long and bloody career, like prey. All ships, he commanded, pushing down his fear. Open fire. The Kreeth fleet attacked, and the Prometheus began to show humanity's true nature to the galaxy. Admiral Marcus Cole stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched the Kreeth fleet arrange itself for battle. The bridge was unlike anything on Earth's other vessels. It was a sphere of pure darkness, interrupted only by floating, holographic displays that showed every piece of information a commander might need. Cole stood at the center, surrounded by his crew of 300 officers, each one the best humanity had to offer. They had trained for years on simulations, hoping they would never have to put that training into practice. That hope was now dead. Status report, Cole said quietly. Commander Lisa Wong, his executive officer, answered without looking up from her console. All systems operational. Weapons at full charge. Shields at maximum. The crew is ready, Admiral. And our people on the station? Ambassador Vasquez has confirmed their position. They are safe for now. Cole nodded slowly. On the main display, he could see the station of Volantis Prime, a silver jewel floating in the darkness. Somewhere inside that structure, 12 humans were waiting for rescue. Somewhere beyond it, the Kreeth were preparing to demonstrate that humanity had no place among the stars. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Open a channel to all frequencies, Cole commanded. Let everyone hear this. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, sir. Cole drew himself up to his full height. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every human who had ever lifted a weapon in defense of their home. This is Admiral Marcus Cole of the Earth Dreadnought Prometheus. To the Kreeth hegemony forces, you have threatened a human diplomatic vessel and demanded the subjugation of our species. He paused, letting the words sink in across the fleet. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. For a moment, nothing happened. The Kreeth ships hung in space like a wall of death, 200 against 1. On paper, it was not even a contest. The most powerful empire in this sector against a single vessel from a species that had only just learned to travel between stars. Then the Kreeth opened fire. The first wave of missiles was visible even from the station. Thousands of points of light streaked across the void, each one carrying enough explosive power to vaporize a city block. Behind them came beams of directed energy, cutting lines of destruction through space. The Kreeth were not taking chances. They were throwing everything they had at the human ship, determined to end this challenge before it could truly begin. The crew of the Prometheus watched the incoming death on their displays. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Admiral Cole simply said, "Activate defensive systems." The Prometheus's shields came to life. They were not shields in the traditional sense, not energy barriers or magnetic fields. What the Prometheus used was something new, something that human scientists had only recently discovered how to harness. The ship generated a bubble of altered space around itself, a region where the normal laws of physics were gently bent in its favor. The missiles entered that bubble and slowed. Their guidance systems became confused. Their warheads failed to detonate. They drifted past the human vessel like rain flowing around a stone, continuing into the empty void behind it. The energy beams fared no better. They curved away from the Prometheus, redirected by gravity wells that should not have existed. Some of them bent completely around and headed back toward the ships that had fired them. Interesting, Cole said mildly. Their weapons appear to be malfunctioning. Commander Wong allowed herself a slight smile. Perhaps we should help them, Admiral. Perhaps we should. Targeting? The weapons officer, a young man named Rodriguez, looked up. All primary batteries locked onto the Kreeth flagship. Secondary batteries covering the fleet. The Helios array is charged and ready. Good. Hold the Helios for now. Let's start with something smaller. Cole studied the display, watching the Kreeth fleet recover from its initial surprise and begin maneuvering for a coordinated assault. Warlord Thalvek was not stupid. He had recognized that conventional weapons were not working, and he was adapting his strategy. The Kreeth ships were spreading out, trying to surround the Prometheus, searching for weaknesses to exploit. They're probing our defenses, Wong observed. Testing for gaps. They won't find any. Cole's voice was flat, certain. But let's not waste time. Target the nearest dreadnought and fire the forward plasma lance. The plasma lance was humanity's answer to the energy weapons used by most galactic civilizations. Where alien technology focused on efficiency and precision, humans had focused on raw, overwhelming power. The lance drew energy directly from the Prometheus's reactors, which burned with the fury of captured stars, and concentrated it into a beam of plasma hotter than the surface of the sun. The weapon fired. One moment, the Kreth Dreadnought existed. The next moment, it was gone. The plasma lance cut through its shields as if they were not there, through its armored hull, through its internal structure, and out the other side. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist, reduced to atoms and expanding gas in the span of a heartbeat. Silence fell over the Kreth fleet. On the observation deck of Volantis Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched the display with her mouth hanging open. She had been told that the Prometheus was powerful, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. Did that just happen? Lieutenant Park whispered beside her. Yes, Elena said. Yes, it did. One shot. One shot and a Kreth Dreadnought is just gone. Around them, the alien delegates who had retreated to the observation deck were making sounds of shock and disbelief. High Arbiter Vorath stood frozen, his black eyes fixed on the human ship with something that looked very much like fear. This cannot be, whispered one of the Volani, its jellyfish body flickering with agitated colors. The energy requirements alone, the physics of such a weapon. It appears, Vorath said slowly, that we have underestimated humanity. Outside, the battle was continuing. Warlord Talvek was screaming orders, his usual composure completely shattered. His tactical display showed the impossible. His most powerful warship, destroyed in a single shot by a vessel that should not exist. Around him, his crew was struggling to keep up with his commands, their own fear making them clumsy and slow. All ships, concentrate fire on that monster. Everything we have. The Kreth fleet responded with renewed fury. Missiles streaked toward the Prometheus from every direction. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, trying to find any angle that might penetrate those impossible shields. Kinetic rounds the size of buildings were launched at speeds that should have torn through anything. The Prometheus ignored all of it. The human ship began to move, and its movement was unlike anything the Kreth had seen. It did not accelerate gradually like a normal vessel. It simply shifted, appearing in one place and then another, covering vast distances in the blink of an eye. Its weapons fired continuously, each shot precisely targeted, each shot finding its mark. A second dreadnought died, then a third, then 6 cruisers in rapid succession, picked off by secondary batteries that the Kreth had initially dismissed as too small to matter. Those batteries fired projectiles wrapped in their own miniature warp fields, allowing them to bypass enemy shields entirely. They struck the vulnerable interiors of the Kreth ships and tore them apart from within. Admiral Cole watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, studying the art of war as practiced by humanity throughout its history. He had learned from Alexander and Caesar, from Sun Tzu and Clausewitz, from every general and admiral who had ever commanded forces in battle. He had taken their lessons and applied them to the weapons of the future, and now he was applying those lessons to aliens who had never faced a species like humanity. Admiral, Commander Wong said, the Kreth are attempting to regroup. They're forming a defensive sphere around the flagship. Smart. Thalvek is learning. Cole studied the display. But not fast enough. How many have we destroyed so far? 23, sir. 18 dreadnoughts and 5 cruisers. And our status? Hull integrity at 100%. Shield efficiency unchanged. All weapon systems fully operational. Cole nodded. The Prometheus had been designed to fight a fleet by itself, and it was proving that design was more than justified. But this was not just about winning. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy. Open a channel to the Kreth flagship, he commanded. A moment later, Thalvek's face appeared on the display. The warlord looked different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something rawer and more honest. He looked like what he was, a predator who had suddenly discovered that he was not at the top of the food chain. Warlord Thalvek, Cole said calmly, your fleet has lost 23 vessels. My ship remains undamaged. I am prepared to continue this engagement until every one of your ships is destroyed, but I am also prepared to offer you a choice. What choice? Thalvek's voice was a broken thing, stripped of its earlier confidence. Withdraw. Leave this system. Return to your hegemony, and tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity is not a prey species. Tell them that if they ever threaten Earth or its people again, we will come for them, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to destroy, utterly and completely. You would let us go? After threatening your world? I would rather not waste more ammunition. But make no mistake, Warlord. If you refuse, if you continue this attack, I will turn my ship's primary weapon on your fleet and demonstrate what it means to truly anger humanity. Thalvek was silent for a long moment. Behind him, his crew was watching, waiting, hoping that their leader would choose life. How do I know you won't attack us as we retreat? You don't. That's the price of threatening us. Cole's expression was stone. You gambled on humanity's weakness. You lost. Now you must trust in our mercy and hope that we are better than you. On the observation deck of Volantis Prime, Ambassador Vasquez watched the exchange with tears streaming down her face. She understood what Cole was doing. He was not just fighting a battle. He was establishing a reputation. He was showing the galaxy that humanity could be merciful even in victory, that they would offer peace even to those who had threatened them. But he was also showing that the choice of peace or war rested entirely with humanity's enemies. Thalvek reached his decision. His yellow eyes closed, and when they opened again, they held the look of a creature that knew it had been utterly defeated. We will withdraw, he said. But know this, human. The hegemony does not forget. One day, we will find a way to... No. Cole's voice was sudden and sharp, cutting through Thalvek's threat like a blade. You will not, because right now, at this very moment, there are human ships on their way to every border of your territory. They are not dreadnoughts like this one, but they do not need to be. They are scouts, and their job is to watch. Cole leaned forward. If the hegemony makes any move against humanity, if you build weapons to challenge us, if you even think about revenge, we will know, and we will respond. Not with one ship, but with a fleet. Not with mercy, but with the full fury that our species is capable of delivering. You would attack us preemptively? We would defend ourselves absolutely. That is the lesson you should take from today, Warlord. Humanity does not start fights, but we end them. The channel closed, and the Kreth fleet began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. The surviving ships disengaged from their attack formation and headed for open space. One by one, they disappeared into faster-than-light travel, fleeing the battlefield like animals escaping a forest fire. Within minutes, the space around Volantis Prime was empty, except for the debris of the destroyed ships and the silent, waiting form of the Prometheus. Admiral Cole allowed himself a single deep breath. Around him, his crew was still at their stations, still ready for combat, but the tension in the air was beginning to fade. They had done it. Against all odds, against an enemy that should have been overwhelming. They had won. Commander Wong, he said quietly, take us alongside the station. I believe we have some diplomats to pick up. Yes, sir. Wong hesitated. Admiral, what you said to Thalvek about human ships watching the hegemony borders, was that true? Cole almost smiled. It will be. I sent the orders before we left Earth. By the time the Kreth reach their home space, our scouts will already be in position. You knew this would happen? I knew that if we showed strength, we would have to be prepared to maintain it. Humanity cannot afford to win one battle, and then relax. We are new to the galaxy, Commander. We have made enemies today. We will need to be vigilant. Wong nodded slowly. The galaxy is never going to underestimate us again, is it? Cole looked out at the debris field that had once been a Kreth fleet. No, he said. No, I don't believe they will. On the station, Elena Vasquez watched the Prometheus drift closer, its massive form blocking out the stars. She was still shaking, still struggling to process everything she had witnessed. In the span of an hour, humanity's position in the galaxy had completely transformed. They had arrived as supplicants, begging for acceptance. They had emerged as something else entirely. A power, a force, a species that could not be ignored. High Arbiter Vorath approached her, moving with a humility that had not been there before. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, I believe. We have much to discuss. Elena wiped her face and straightened her shoulders. The diplomat was taking over again, pushing down the terror and the triumph to focus on what came next. Yes, High Arbiter, she said. I believe we do. The debris field spread across thousands of kilometers of space. Pieces of Kreth warships tumbled through the void, some still burning with fires that would take hours to exhaust their oxygen. Bodies drifted among the wreckage, frozen in the instant of their death, their scales already turning pale in the cold of space. Escape pods flickered with emergency lights, their occupants desperately hoping that someone would come to rescue them. Admiral Marcus Cole looked at the destruction from the bridge of the Prometheus and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not regret, not triumph. Just a cold emptiness that he had learned to accept long ago. "Commander Wong," he said quietly, "send a message to any surviving Kreth vessels. Offer to pick up their escape pods and deliver them to neutral territory." Wong looked up in surprise. "Sir, after what they tried to do, we are not them. We proved we can destroy. Now we prove we can show mercy." Cole's voice was firm. "History will remember this day. I wanted to remember that humanity gave its enemies a choice, and when they chose defeat, we treated them with dignity." "Yes, sir." Wong began relaying the orders, and small shuttles launched from the Prometheus's hangars, heading toward the blinking lights of the escape pods. The alien observers on Volantis Prime watched these actions with growing confusion. The Volani delegate, its purple form shimmering with uncertainty, approached High Arbiter Vorath. "They are saving the survivors," it said. "After such a battle, they are helping their enemies." Vorath did not answer immediately. His black eyes were fixed on the human dreadnought, studying its dark hull as if trying to understand the creature that had built it. "I have studied many species," he finally said. "I have seen conquerors and prey, predators and builders, but I have never seen anything like humanity." "What do you mean?" "They fight with a fury that makes the Kreth look timid. Their weapons are beyond anything we believed possible for a species so young. And yet, when the battle ends, they offer aid to those who would have enslaved them." Vorath shook his massive head. "They are a paradox. Violent and merciful, primitive and advanced. I do not understand them. Should we fear them?" "I think," Vorath said slowly, "that fear would be the wrong response, but underestimating them would be fatal." Inside the human quarters on the station, Ambassador Elena Vasquez was preparing for what came next. She had cleaned herself up, brushed her hair, and put on a fresh diplomatic uniform. The terror of the past hours was still with her, but she pushed it down. There would be time for nightmares later. Right now, she had work to do. Lieutenant Park stood by the door, watching her with something like awe. "You're really going back out there?" he asked. "After everything that happened?" "That's exactly why I have to go back out there." Elena checked her reflection one final time. "The Prometheus proved that humanity can fight. Now I have to prove that we can do more than that." "You think they'll listen now?" "They'll definitely listen. The question is whether they'll respect us or just fear us." Elena turned to face him. "Fear is useful in the short term, but it breeds resentment. If we want allies, real allies, we need to show them that the Prometheus is a shield, not a sword." "Isn't it both?" Elena smiled sadly. "Yes, but they don't need to focus on that part." A signal chimed, indicating that a shuttle was requesting permission to dock. Admiral Cole had arrived. The meeting took place in the same grand conclave chamber where Elena had stood just days ago, hoping for friendship and finding betrayal. Now the atmosphere was completely different. The alien delegates who had fled were back, but they did not float on their platforms with casual superiority. They crowded around the edges of the room, watching the humans with expressions that ranged from fear to fascination. Admiral Cole entered first, his uniform crisp and his bearing military. He walked like a man who had nothing to prove, because he had already proved everything. Behind him came Commander Wong and a small honor guard, their weapons holstered but visible. Elena met them at the center of the chamber, and for a moment, the two representatives of humanity simply looked at each other. Then Cole extended his hand, and Elena shook it firmly. "Ambassador, it's good to see you safe." "Admiral, thank you for the rescue." Elena's voice carried a hint of dry humor. "I understand you brought quite the response to my distress signal. I believe the situation called for a strong statement. I think you made it." High Arbiter Vorath approached, moving with none of his earlier condescension. He stopped a respectful distance from the humans and inclined his massive head. "Admiral Cole, on behalf of the Galactic Conquered, I offer my congratulations on your victory." Cole studied the alien for a long moment before responding. I don't require congratulations, High Arbiter. What I require is an explanation. An explanation? When the Kreth threatened humanity, the Concord did nothing. You claimed your laws prevented you from intervening. You abandoned our diplomats to face enslavement or death. Cole's voice was calm but cold as ice. I would like to understand why we should trust an organization that treats its guests this way. Vorath was silent. Around the chamber, the other delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Concord has existed for 50,000 years, Vorath finally said. In that time, we have learned that interference in conflicts often causes more harm than good. Our neutrality has preserved peace among our members for millennia. Your neutrality allowed a fleet of conquerors to threaten genocide in your own station. Cole stepped closer to Vorath, close enough that the height difference became dramatic. The Admiral barely reached the alien's chest, but somehow he seemed like the larger presence. Your peace is an illusion, High Arbiter. It exists only because no one has bothered to challenge it, and you believe you have the right to make that challenge. I believe that any species willing to stand by while innocents are threatened has no right to claim moral authority. Cole turned to face the entire chamber. Humanity came here seeking allies. We were told that the galaxy was a place of cooperation and shared progress. Instead, we found the same thing we have always known. The strong prey on the weak, and the civilized make excuses for letting it happen. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we also learned something else. We learned that we are not weak. We learned that the weapons we built to fight each other can also protect us from the threats of the wider universe. We learned that our violent history, which we once thought was a shame, is actually our greatest strength. Ambassador Vasquez stepped forward, taking over from the Admiral. Her voice was softer but no less firm. High Arbiter Vorath, we did not come here to make enemies. We came seeking a place among you. That desire has not changed. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from species she did not yet have names for. Humanity is willing to join the Concord, but we will not beg for acceptance, and we will not agree to laws that allow aggressors to threaten us without consequence. Vorath considered her words carefully. What are you proposing? A modification to your laws. Any species that threatens a Concord member or guest with violence should face immediate response from the Concord's collective forces. No more hiding behind neutrality while innocents suffer. That would require the Concord to maintain a military force. We have never done this. Then perhaps it is time to start. Elena gestured toward the viewport, where the Prometheus was still visible against the stars. Humanity can provide the foundation. Our technology is different from yours, built for a purpose you never anticipated. We can defend what the Concord represents better than any force you could build alone. The murmuring in the chamber grew louder. Some of the delegates seemed horrified by the suggestion. Others appeared intrigued. A few were nodding slowly, as if the idea made a terrible kind of sense. You would have humanity become the warriors of the Concord, Vorath said, the protectors of our peace. We would have humanity earn its place among you, Elena corrected. Not through submission, but through contribution. We will give you our strength, and in return, you will give us the knowledge and technology we need to grow. A partnership of equals. Equals? One of the other delegates spoke up, a crystalline being whose body refracted light in dazzling patterns. You have been in space for less than a century. We have civilizations that have existed for millions of years. How can you claim to be our equals? Admiral Cole answered. Because we just proved that age means nothing. The Kreth have conquered 11 star systems. They brought 200 warships to claim our species. We brought one ship, and we destroyed a quarter of their fleet in less than an hour. He pointed at the viewport. That ship was built by a species that you considered primitive. We designed it in secret, without access to your knowledge or your technology. We created something that none of you have ever seen because we approached the problem differently. We did not ask how things had always been done. We asked how they could be done better. The crystalline being was silent. Humanity is young, Cole continued. But youth is not weakness. It is potential. We do not carry the weight of tradition. We do not accept that something is impossible just because it has never been done. And we are very, very good at finding new ways to solve problems. Elena stepped forward again, pressing the advantage. High Arbiter, the Kreth will not be the last threat the Concord faces. You have built a civilization on peace, but peace cannot defend itself. Sooner or later, another predator will come, and when it does, you will need someone who knows how to fight. And you believe humanity is that someone? I believe humanity is willing to be that someone. The question is whether the Concord is willing to accept us. Vorath stood motionless for a long moment. Then he turned to the assembly, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. The matter before us is unprecedented. A species less than a century into spaceflight has demonstrated military capability beyond anything we have observed. They propose a fundamental change to the nature of the Concord, transforming us from an association of peaceful civilizations into an alliance with the ability to enforce that peace. He paused. I will not make this decision alone. Each species must consider what humanity offers and what it represents. We will reconvene in 3 days to vote on their proposal. The chamber began to empty slowly. Delegates filed out, their thoughts visible on their strange and varied faces. Some looked worried. Others looked hopeful. All of them looked at the humans differently than they had before. When the room was nearly empty, Vorath approached Elena and Cole one final time. You have changed things, he said quietly. For better or worse, the galaxy will never be the same after today. Change can be frightening, Elena acknowledged, but it can also be an opportunity. Indeed. Vorath's black eyes studied them with new respect. I confess, I was among those who believed humanity was too young, too primitive, too violent to join us. I believed you needed centuries more development before you would be ready. And now? Now I believe we were wrong about what ready means. Vorath inclined his head. You have given us much to consider, Ambassador. Admiral. I will see you in 3 days. He departed, leaving the humans alone in the vast chamber. Cole let out a slow breath. That went better than I expected. It's not over yet, Elena reminded him. They still have to vote, and not all of them will agree. No, but enough will. Cole looked out at the stars. Fear is a powerful motivator, and we just gave them plenty of that. But you also gave them something else. Hope. Hope? The Concord has been stagnant for thousands of years, hiding behind neutrality while species like the Krith carved out empires by force. Deep down, some of them must have known it couldn't last. Now we've shown them an alternative. Cole almost smiled. A way to be strong without becoming conquerors themselves. Elena considered this. You think they'll vote yes? I think enough of them will. And the ones who vote no. Cole shrugged. They'll come around eventually. When the next threat appears and we're the ones who stop it, they'll understand. And if we're not able to stop it? If something comes that even the Prometheus can't defeat? Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to face her, and his eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Not confidence, not certainty, but something deeper. Faith. Then we'll find a way, he said. That's what humans do, Ambassador. We face the impossible and find a way. It's the only thing we've ever been truly good at. Elena thought about everything her species had survived. Ice ages and plagues, wars that killed millions, weapons that could destroy the world. She thought about how many times humanity should have ended, and how many times they had found a way to continue. Maybe Cole was right. Maybe that stubborn refusal to die was exactly what the galaxy needed. 3 days, she said. Then we'll know what kind of future we're building. Cole nodded. Until then, Ambassador, get some rest. You've earned it. He turned and walked out of the chamber, his honor guard falling in behind him. Elena watched him go, then turned to look out the viewport one more time. The Prometheus hung in space, dark and silent and unimaginably powerful. It was humanity's gift to the galaxy, proof that the universe was no longer a place where the weak could be exploited without consequence. Elena hoped the galaxy was ready for what that meant. 3 days passed like years. Ambassador Elena Vasquez spent them in meetings that blurred together, talking to delegates from species whose names she could barely pronounce. She explained humanity's history, their wars, their art, their dreams. She answered questions that ranged from the profound to the absurd. She smiled until her face hurt, and listened until her ears rang with alien voices. Admiral Cole spent the time differently. He remained on the Prometheus, overseeing repairs that were not strictly necessary and running drills that his crew did not need. He was a man of action, and waiting did not come naturally to him. But he understood the importance of what was happening on the station. So he waited, and watched, and prepared for whatever came next. On the morning of the 3rd day, Elena stood before her small mirror in her quarters and studied her reflection. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes and new lines on her forehead. The past week had aged her more than the previous decade. "You look terrible," Lieutenant Park said from the doorway. "Thank you for that observation. I mean it in the most supportive way possible." He entered the room and handed her a cup of coffee. Real coffee, somehow obtained from Earth through channels he refused to explain. Big day. The biggest. Elena took the cup and breathed in the familiar scent. By tonight, humanity will either be the newest member of the Galactic Concord or the species everyone is afraid to associate with. Is there really a difference? Elena considered the question. Yes. Members have access to technology, trade routes, diplomatic protection. We would gain centuries of advancement in a single stroke, but if they reject us, we'll be on our own. No allies, no resources, no knowledge beyond what we can discover ourselves. We managed to build the Prometheus without any of that. We did, but imagine what we could build with it. Elena took a sip of coffee and let the warmth spread through her. That's what I keep thinking about. Not just survival, but growth. The chance to become something more than we've ever been. Park was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you think they'll say yes?" "I honestly don't know. We've spent the last 3 days trying to convince them, but I still can't read most of these species. Their body language, their expressions. Everything is different." Elena shook her head. "All I can do is make the best case I can and hope that logic wins over fear." "And if logic doesn't win?" Elena smiled grimly. "Then, the Prometheus is still out there, and the galaxy will have to deal with humanity whether they like it or not." The Grand Conclave chamber was full. Every delegate from every species had gathered for the vote. They filled the floating platforms at every level. A sea of strange and beautiful forms that represented the collective wisdom of 50,000 years. The chamber hummed with conversation in 100 different languages, all of it focused on the same topic: humanity. Elena walked to the central platform with Admiral Cole beside her. They had agreed that both of them should be present for this moment. The diplomat and the warrior, standing together, it was a symbol that Elena hoped would not be lost on their audience. High Arbiter Vorath rose to address the assembly. His massive form commanded instant silence, and his deep voice filled every corner of the chamber. "The Galactic Concord has convened to consider a matter of historic importance. The species known as humanity has requested membership in our union, along with a proposal to modify our fundamental laws regarding collective defense." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "For the past 3 days, we have debated this issue. We have heard arguments for and against. We have examined humanity's history, their capabilities, and their intentions. Now, the time has come to decide." Vorath turned to face Elena and Cole. "Ambassador Vasquez, Admiral Cole, before we proceed to the vote, do you have any final words for this assembly?" Elena stepped forward. She had prepared a speech, carefully crafted to address every concern and answer every objection. But standing here, looking out at the faces of 47 species, she found herself abandoning it entirely. 3 weeks ago, I left Earth believing that I knew what humanity wanted from the stars. We wanted knowledge. We wanted technology. We wanted the validation of discovering that we were not alone. She took a deep breath. "I was wrong about all of it." A murmur passed through the chamber. Elena continued. "What humanity truly wanted was something simpler. We wanted to know that there was a place for us in the universe, a meaning beyond our small world, a future that stretched farther than we could see." She gestured toward the viewport, where distant stars glittered like diamonds. "You have been exploring the galaxy for 50,000 years. You have seen wonders we cannot imagine and faced dangers we have not dreamed of. In all that time, has any of you ever felt that longing, that desperate need to find your place among the infinite?" Some of the delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded slowly. "Humanity is young. We have made terrible mistakes. We have killed each other in wars that served no purpose, destroyed civilizations that should have been cherished, poisoned our own world in the pursuit of progress." Elena's voice grew stronger. "But we have also loved with fierce devotion, created beauty that moved us to tears, and reached out to touch the impossible with hands that refused to stop reaching." She looked at Admiral Cole, then back at the assembly. "You ask if humanity is ready to join you. I cannot promise that we are. I cannot guarantee that we will not make mistakes, that we will not stumble and fall as we learn to walk among the stars. All I can promise is that we will try, with everything we have, with every ounce of determination our species possesses, we will try to be worthy of this moment. Elena stepped back, and Cole stepped forward. I will speak more simply, he said. The High Arbiter mentioned our proposal to modify the Concord's laws. Some of you see this as a threat, a young species trying to reshape the galaxy in its own image. Let me address that concern directly. He turned to face the platforms one by one. Humanity does not wish to rule the Concord. We do not wish to impose our values or our ways on anyone. We simply believe that peace must be defended, and we are offering to do that defense. He paused. The Kreth came to this station with a fleet of 200 ships. They threatened to enslave a species they had never met, simply because they believed they could, and the Concord, with all its wisdom and all its history, could do nothing but watch. Several delegates made sounds of protest, but Cole continued, I am not here to criticize your laws or your traditions. I understand why you created them. After thousands of years, you have learned that intervention often creates more problems than it solves. But I am also a soldier, and I know what happens when aggressors believe there will be no consequences for their actions. He pointed at the viewport. My ship destroyed 23 Kreth vessels in less than an hour. The hegemony fled, not because they were defeated, but because they realized that the cost of victory would be too high. That is what deterrence looks like. That is what protected this station when nothing else could. Cole lowered his hand. Humanity is offering to be that protection for all of you, not because we want power or glory, but because we believe that a galaxy where the weak can be exploited is not a galaxy worth living in. He met Vorath's black eyes. Vote as your conscience dictates. We will accept whatever you decide. He stepped back to stand beside Elena, and silence fell over the chamber. Vorath looked out at the assembly. The proposal before us is unprecedented. It would transform the nature of our union. Each species must decide for itself whether this transformation is worth the risk. He raised one massive hand. The vote will proceed by delegation. When your species is called, indicate your position. Yes to accept humanity's membership and the proposed modifications. No to reject both. Abstentions will be recorded but will not count toward the result. The voting began. Elena watched with her heart pounding as delegation after delegation made their choice. The Villani voted yes. The crystalline beings who had questioned humanity's equality voted no. Species she had never spoken to voted in patterns she could not predict. Some seemed enthusiastic, others appeared reluctant. A few abstained entirely, unwilling to commit to either side. The count moved slowly, each vote bringing humanity closer to its future, or its isolation. Elena tried to keep track of the numbers, but her mind was spinning too fast. After what felt like hours, Vorath announced the final tally. The vote has concluded. Of 47 species present, 33 have voted yes, 10 have voted no, 4 have abstained. Elena felt the breath rush out of her. By a margin of more than 2/3. Vorath continued. The Galactic Concord welcomes humanity as its 48th member species. The proposed modifications to our collective defense laws have been approved and will take effect immediately. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates cheered. Others made sounds of dismay. A few simply stared at the humans with expressions that Elena could not begin to interpret. She turned to Admiral Cole and found him watching her with something that was almost a smile. We did it, she said. You did it, Ambassador. I just provided the persuasion. We did it together. Elena shook her head in disbelief. Humanity is part of the Galactic Concord. We have allies among the stars. And responsibilities, Cole reminded her. The Concord has just agreed to let us become their protectors. That's not a title we can wear lightly. I know. Elena looked out at the celebration around them. But it's a start. For the first time in our history, humanity isn't alone anymore. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Humanity's acceptance into the Concord triggered a cascade of changes. Trade agreements were signed. Technology was shared. Human scientists gained access to databases containing the accumulated knowledge of 50,000 years, while alien researchers studied the Prometheus with something approaching awe. Admiral Cole established the first joint defense fleet, combining human vessels with ships from species who had never before contemplated military action. It was a strange alliance, bringing together warriors and pacifists, predators and prey, But somehow it worked. Humanity's approach to conflict, pragmatic, adaptive, ruthlessly effective, proved contagious. Ambassador Vasquez became the permanent human representative to the Concord, establishing an embassy on Volantis Prime that became a center for cultural exchange. Humans and aliens mingled in its halls, trading stories and ideas and dreams of the future, and far beyond the borders of the Concord. The Kreth hegemony watched. Warlord Thalvek had been replaced after his defeat. Killed by subordinates who saw his failure as unforgivable weakness, the new leadership was more cautious, but no less ambitious. They studied the Prometheus from a distance, trying to understand how such a weapon could exist. They would try again, someday. Everyone knew it. The question was whether the Concord would be ready when that day came. On the anniversary of the first contact, Elena stood on the observation deck of Volantis Prime and looked out at the stars. Behind her, a celebration was in full swing, with representatives from dozens of species raising glasses to humanity's first year among them. Admiral Cole found her there, stepping away from the party to join her at the window. "Not celebrating?" he asked. "Just thinking. Dangerous activity." Elena smiled. "Do you remember what I said to you when we first met in that chamber? About humanity offering peace?" "I remember. I meant it then, and I mean it now. This alliance, this fleet, all of it, it's meant to protect the peace, not to conquer or dominate." Cole nodded slowly. "I know. And I believe you." He paused. "But I also know that peace has a price. We've been lucky this year. The Kreth have stayed quiet. The other threats have been minor. Sooner or later, something bigger will come. Something that will test everything we've built. And when it does," Cole looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death and still believed in something worth protecting. "When it does, we'll face it, together." He gestured at the celebration behind them, at the alien faces mixing with human ones, at the impossible dream of cooperation that had somehow become reality. "That's what we built this for, Ambassador. Not just to defend ourselves, but to defend something worth defending." Elena considered his words. Then she turned back to the window, to the infinite expanse of stars that now held a place for humanity. "Humanity came to the stars seeking diplomacy," she said quietly. "Instead, we showed them a dreadnought. Sometimes, strength is the only diplomacy that matters. Maybe." Elena watched a distant ship cross the viewport, its running lights blinking in the darkness. "But I like to think we showed them something else, too. We showed them that strength and mercy can exist in the same hand, that you can destroy your enemies and still offer them salvation. Do you think they understood that?" Elena smiled. "I think some of them did, and I think the rest will learn. In time." She turned to face him. "That's the real lesson of the Prometheus, Admiral. It's not just a weapon, it's a promise. A promise that humanity will never stop fighting for what we believe in. That we will face the darkness with everything we have, and refuse to be broken by it." She looked back at the stars. "And that if the galaxy stands with us, we will stand with them. Until the end." Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he raised his glass he had brought too, she realized, and handed one to her. "To humanity," he said. Elena took the glass and raised it. "To humanity, and to the future we're building." They drank together, watching the stars wheel overhead, and the galaxy turned around them. Far away, in the secret docks beneath Earth's moon, workers were already beginning construction on humanity's next ship. It would be larger than the Prometheus, stronger, more terrible in its power, because humanity had learned the lesson that the universe taught all its children. Peace was precious precisely because it had to be defended, and defend it they would, forever.